Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because I have Jason Kotarski from Green Couch Games on the line. Say hello, Jason.
Hey everybody, hey Edo.
Hey man. And so, let's just jump in and to kick things off. I was hoping you could give a little rundown for everyone on how you got started and how you started Green Couch Games. Like what's the story there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I a few years prior to starting Green Couch Games, I discovered that I had this love for board games. So my wife hooked me up. She showed me Settlers of Catan that she played in college, and I thought it was this geeky thing she wanted to spend too much money on, and we bought it. And then like the next thing you know, I'm like Googling European board games, and my collection grew pretty fast. And I've always been a contributor type person, not just a consumer. So like right away, I saw people's names on those boxes, and I thought, hey, I want to make some games. I want my name on a box. And my very first design got picked up and published by Dice Hate Me Games, and that was the Great Heartland Holland Company. And I loved every minute of that, even just kind of like the behind the scenes stuff, working with Chris Kirkman and kind of learning about what goes into publishing. And it felt very much in line with like my experience before. I was in bands and stuff, so I like kind of did I did like project management, like booking management, like writing songs, booking studio time, all this stuff. And I'm just like, I wonder if I could use that to do this board game
Yeah.
publishing thing.
Well, and so hold on a second, so we're
Oh,
clear.
yeah, yeah,
Were
yeah,
you like
yeah.
you like your first design? You're just like wrote it on a piece of paper, submitted it, and it was like, did you struggle at all, or did you just like, you know what,
Uh,
this board game thing's cool, and I'm just gonna knock it out of the park first swing? I mean, what happened there?
I think there was definitely some luck. It was a little bit longer journey than that. So like I initially came up with this idea, made it out of a deck of cards and another deck of cards that I cut up to be kind of my resources that I was moving around, and started playing with some game pieces. I had started collecting just in case an idea ever struck. I had this little box of parts and uh, made this little game, and I was like, I think there's something here. And I asked my wife to play it with me, and she's like, oh, yeah, this feels like a game. And it was initially a two-player game. And then I entered it into the Rio Grande game design contest that
Ah,
they were
okay.
doing a few years ago. And I think I was second place at the regional one, so I was like one vote away from going to present it to Rio Grande. And the game that went was an abstract game from my region, and I'm like, oh, they're never gonna do that game. They should do my game. But I was like kind of invigorated by that process and the feedback I got, because the play testing kind of contest was at a local con, so I was playing my game
Yeah,
with like
getting into the
real
scene. Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
And they were like, "This is fun. I'd buy this today." I had a friend who was a graphic designer who made it look pretty, and I'm like, "That's really cool." So then I'm like, "There's something here. I think I'm gonna take it to the next step." And my wife's like, "Wait a minute! Before you spend any of our money doing this, like, see if someone else will pay." So I sent some emails around, and I signed it with Cambridge Games Factory right before they were getting ready to do their first Kickstarter of Glory to Rome
Right.
on Kickstarter. So I signed, and then they did this huge campaign, and it kind of got out of control, and then it took them forever to fulfill it, and they had all these games in the queue, mine being one of them, and I just could see that they were never going to get to it.
Did they and
And,
they let you out?
yeah, it was actually a really cool thing. Like there was a thing in my contract that said if we haven't spent any money on your game, you can take it back at any point. So I was like,
They're
okay.
like, why did we put that in there? Um, all right, so cool. All right, so you see, so Steve Arameni, Danny Devine. Those guys have done the contest route. A lot of people have done contests. It's just a great level playing field for game design, and clearly you were able to move it into getting something published. How many? So how did you make this jump? Clearly your wife's monitoring your every step of the way here. How did you make this jump to Green Couch now? Like you're a published designer. You could have just done more games. Done the royalty thing. What was the shift?
Yeah, well, I like a challenge, and once I got started, I definitely got a taste for like I want to dive deeper into this community, uh, and and I'm not one of those designers who is like I have an idea every 10 minutes and like we'll just constantly working on a dozen or more games. I'm kind of like more of a wait for inspiration to
Sure,
like to
sure.
strike. I'm not like put a button in my chair and like wait and make something happen. I'm kind of like, oh, that would be a fun idea, and then I start tinkering, right? As a designer. So I was kind of finding like I don't have any ideas like right now. I've worked on this one game for quite a while, and that was Fidelitas with Philip DeBerry. And we had submitted that to another publisher, and we're kind of waiting to hear from them. And they're like, make it bigger. And then we made it bigger. And they're like, maybe make it smaller. And they're like, okay, we'll make it smaller. And then I was like, we heard nothing. And then I was just thinking about this publishing thing and about how my skills were suited maybe towards like helping other people in my downtime between game designs work on their games. So I went to Philip and I said, hey, would you trust me to like try an experiment and try to get this game funded and maybe start a game company? I called it an experiment at first because I wasn't as confident. I just like, I'm going to do this thing and maybe it'll be a one shot, or like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I hope this turns into a thing, but I wasn't ready to like call it that out loud yet.
Sure.
So then
Philip's a cool dude, man.
Yeah, he was awesome. We met on Twitter, and like I was like, "Hey, will you look at my game? I think that it could fit into something similar to what you've done before." And he's like, "Oh, this has some cool stuff, but it needs work. Want to co-design it? I've never done that before." And I'm like, "Me neither." And you made Revolution, one of my favorite games, so let's do that together. And the game was better for it, and we loved it, and we play tested, and then we were just waiting to hear. So then I said, I'm gonna start the Screen Couch Games thing, and he was like, "Go for it. Let's see what happens." And then I just kind of like I kind of like had been watching Dice Hate Me enough to just copy like everything they did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm gonna hire a great artist. Chris was their great artist, but I hired Jackie Davis, who had worked on
that is a beautiful game, man. That is a beautiful game.
Yeah, Jackie's art blew me away from day one. When I first saw her stuff, it was Belle the Ball from Dice Hate Me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's fantastic. So I hired her,
even what you have is better than Belle the Ball. I mean that is a great looking. You. I mean, your stuff's all good looking, but that one's really good looking.
Well, thank you. That was a cool thing too. She told me she was just experimenting with like using light. Yeah. Like it was a very specific style. So like she's like, I'm gonna make it in this like kind of like lithograph, like stained glass style. And they were like classic Disney meets that. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. So I used my tax return that year to pay for art. And I'm like, this is the money that we are going to spend on this. And I think it was the right move as a new creator going to Kickstarter to have everything completely done. So I showed people from day one, okay, I got everything ready to go. And I had started building a platform for myself because I had been on a bunch of podcasts promoting Heartland Holland and then Dead Drop later with Crash Games and kind of starting to get around the smaller convention scene and getting to know people. So I started building a little bit of a platform, and then I started the 20 Minutes of Filler podcast.
Right. So because before the Kickstarter or after?
Yeah, it was before the Kickstarter.
So still before. Okay. You're still building your community. Like I had the experience with Liftoff where I really was not active in the community. I had this 3-month crunch leading into Liftoff where I was like, I got to get part of the community. And then it was actually after Liftoff that I was like, hey, I want to be contributing. I want to be, I don't want to just show up once a year and go asking for people for stuff. And I want to be a part of this. And that's when I started the YouTube thing in gaming. So it was actually, it sounds like you did it a little bit before you did the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and there was part of that was I started 20 Minutes of Filler thinking about I love small games, filler games. That is what I'm all about. That's what I like to play. That's typically what I design. And I got this idea wouldn't it be cool if I made a company that focused on filler games where most companies make fillers, but they're kind of the afterthought unless they get lucky and they have a hit and then it blows up. But they're just we got to fill out our schedule. They're more into these big games. And I'm like, what if we become a company that when people say I need a filler, they say, well, you just get something from Green Couch Games because they specialize in fillers. So I thought I'm going to see if I can gather an audience around that idea by creating a short podcast that just specializes in talking about these little games. And pretty quickly, we had a few hundred listeners, and then I joined the Dice Tower Network, and then we tripled our listeners. And then I got a lot of confidence, thinking, okay, there are people out here who like what I'm talking about. So, and I have this captive audience. So when I present, hey, I'm going to do this company, at least I have somebody listening.
For sure.
Yeah. So that was huge. And that first Kickstarter, I think we were on the same time as you were with Liftoff. I remember here's this other new guy out here doing, doing a thing.
How did that campaign? I'm sure. It must have done well, but how well did it do? Do you remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, it did. We did almost 2,000 backers, and
that's a huge number.
Yeah, at $19 a copy.
50, 60 grand.
Yeah, we had 35, I believe, is what.
Oh, a
Yeah,
smaller
19
game.
bucks.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that I mean, and it's so interesting because I have to clearly Green Couch has a perspective, right? That was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I didn't realize it was quite so from the get go. You know how
Hmm.
that the filler game, all your stuff is in. I'm pretty sure an identical box size, perhaps not, but you really have a line that is
Hmm.
very recognizable and very consistent. Um, it
Yeah,
seems to me.
that was yeah, the small box kind of thing. Like I set some guidelines because I had this game designer kind of perspective coming into it where like constraints are helpful. Like if I limit myself to components, maybe I can use those to make a great game without getting too involved in like, well, I could follow this breadcrumb and this one and that one and just go wherever it takes me. Or like if I start with constraints, like I can work better. That's helpful for me. So I thought I'm going to make small games that are $20 or less. They're in a small box. They need to be able to teach in about 5 minutes, and they need to play in like no longer than an hour, closer to 30 minutes if possible. So that was kind of like what I set out to do. And you're right. Like so far, 9 games will all be in the same small box. They're like 3.5 inches by 5 inches. They fit in your pocket. They're a little bigger than like the
First
two
class
back.
shipping, right?
Yeah, that's right, dude. The 6, 7 ounces is super helpful. Which is a challenge now because the game we're working on next is going to be our first bigger box game. Because
Oh, you broke it.
yeah, I did.
You broke out, man. You had it. I don't know.
You see, I wanted to establish myself as like small boxes, and I will always do those small boxes. But then I wanted to like I wanted to bring new people. That's one of the struggles I've had is like, how do I grow this audience? Like I've already got the attention of the people who like this thing, but how do I let people who like bigger box things know that I mean business and that I make quality products? So I wanted to like create another line of games that is a slightly bigger box, like the lantern size is kind of what I'm shooting for.
Sure.
And the purpose of that was just because I love fillers that are quick and in small boxes, and I love like family Euro style, like kind of gateway games that are like around an hour that weight. So I just thought like I think that ties in pretty close with the audience that I have created for Green Couch, but also might bring some new folks in when I kind of make a bigger splash here. And as a small publisher, like these little teeny games that still have a lot of stuff in them, the margins are can be small at times, and trying to kind of continue to grow the business, like that's on my mind as well. So Best Treehouse Ever Forest of Fun will be the first one that's in a bigger box.
Live on Kickstarter, yes.
That's yes, and funded in 25 hours. So that was pretty exciting.
Awesome, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so definitely check. This is posting on Monday, so it'll still be live on Monday, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, we're doing a short campaign. I watched your video with James Hudson.
Yeah,
And I had been toying around with the like shorter campaign to like kill that middle slump that just rips your heart out and makes you obsessed in bad ways that are unhealthy for your soul. And yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I think this is the game to do it with because Best Treehouse Ever already had an audience.
Exactly. And that was really part of the consideration with Sunset, right? I knew, I was like, if there's a game I'm comfortable being a little bit risky, I know there's an audience. I know they're aware of it. It's a project 2 from this team. So I'm not concerned that it's gonna struggle with discovery.
Right.
And maybe I'm not gonna make as much money, but I'm gonna have my life back sooner, and I like that. And certainly, just to sort of mention it, Best Treehouse Ever, great game, man. So
Thank you.
I was a big fan of the first one. I didn't realize this was a bigger box. Now I'm going to have to be like, oh, wait a minute, this is a big box. I don't know how I feel about it. But
well, here's the selling point
Forest
for
of
that.
Fun, right?
Yeah,
What's the what? Just give the 1 minute spiel on what this is.
Yeah, totally. Like Forest of Fun is a standalone sequel to Best Treehouse Ever.
Okay.
So it has new rooms and then a few new twists. So you add animal cards into your tree as well, which kind of gives some new scoring possibilities, and locations that you've visited as a young kid building this treehouse. You've explored the forest and you've come back kind of leveled up, and now you have special player powers.
Oh, cool.
And the cool, like super cool thing, and why it's in a bigger box is because it can be combined with the original game to now play up to 8 players.
And so,
you
can I put the original game in the
Yeah.
All right.
And you
So
and you don't even have to take it out of the box to do that. You can put the entire first box in your
oh,
big
that's fun.
box and
That's
have
fun.
everything in one container.
That's fun.
So
I do like that. Um, and it makes it sort of you don't feel like you're chucking a box. Um, so you went for the shorter campaign though. You went for was it? Did you do 2 weeks or what did you end up doing?
yeah, 15 days
15.
because it was ending on a Thursday. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, again, going down to 2 weeks, it's hard to imagine ever going back up. Again,
Right.
I'm actually doing. It's gonna be in a couple of days, but I'm doing another Kickstarter for the YouTube channel for Gaming with
Oh,
Edo and all this stuff.
awesome. Awesome.
And looking at time, I'm like, that one's gonna be 2 weeks. That one has like a $500 goal, so it's like, no, I'm not that. But it's just sort of like I interviewed David from Junk Spirit Games, and he's sitting on this healthy 33-day campaign for which just is ending for Tyler Sigmund's Crows.
Oh,
And
okay.
within that campaign, I did my campaign, James did his campaign, and it's still running. And he actually brings up a lot of good points on why it's that long. But man, to go on a long campaign like that again, it's just so draining after once you're doing them more often, right? But let's get back to Green Couch. So now the first game was your design. Then you did this co-design. I mean, there are a lot of similarities between our companies. We've done some different things, but
Hmm.
you do this co-design, but then a number of your games, at least it would appear, and you can correct me, are not really co-designs, but you've signed a designer, and I assume you're doing development. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yes. That is accurate. Yeah. The only one that was a co-design that I have my name on as a designer up to this point is Fidelitas.
Right.
And then after that, I've exclusively worked with other designers. So, and some of that was just because I found games that I loved that I thought would fit what we were doing. Some people came to me. I went to some unpubs. I played with some local folks and all that, and um, a couple friends pointed me in the direction of games they thought I would like, and it just they all seem like good fits, so far. So like that's worked. And one of the things that I'm trying to do as a designer is continue to work with other publishers as a designer because it's nice to not to have to handle all the details of every game ever
Sure.
that you want to be involved in, and I can learn things from those publishers that I work with as a designer, and like I'm going to continue to build my platform that way. Like
Right.
getting my name out to a new audience can be a helpful thing. So, and I'm kind of approaching design as like a hobby, something I'm doing just on the side, kind of for fun. And publishing is my full time gig. So,
And so you are. So you're full time Green Couch Games, with some design here and some other things. Do you have any employees, or is it just you and contractors and that kind of thing?
it's just me and contractors. I work with impressions for sales, and I
Sure.
work with a varying degree of graphic designers and illustrators. So, the full time thing it was I took that leap in January of this year. My family moved to a new community, and we just felt like the flexibility. I had a part time job before doing hospice chaplain work,
Okay.
and
That's a
and
hard
that
job,
was
man. Jeez.
yeah.
Like not you don't
It
look
was
like a guy who's like, yeah, I don't want to get into it, but wow, man.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was pretty well suited for it, and it was a flexible schedule, and it was a part-time gig, and it allowed me to continue working on games as well. But when we moved over here, it just felt like it was the right time to go for it. So in January, like we said, okay, I'm gonna just put all my eggs in this basket for now, and the flexibility has been good for my family, and like it's kind of like full-time work for a part-time salary still,
Oh,
but
part time or quarter time salary, man.
something like that. But yeah, I love doing it, and I love getting to be able to like make games and do something that brings people together. It's like a really special thing to me. So
Yeah, I'm at another junction point right now where it's like I can keep doing the type of thing I've been doing, which is that full time job, full time salary,
hmm
or go into it. And I've sort of been thinking about how to do it and whether or not like how realistic it is for me and where I live and what's going on. In contrast to the sort of designing for other companies, I'm sort of considering like, well, maybe I can sew together some project management type development type gigs in enough places that I can sort of stitch the money together to like Still do
Mm.
because it's not as if, like, for me at least, it's not as if Pencil First is erupting with money, and I'm just like, oh yeah,
Right,
whatever.
right.
Like, and I'm still well in that place where I just anything that comes out of Pencil First just gets plowed right back in for the next game or the next partnership. But anyway, so I'm sort of at that juncture too. And this may or may not be the right time, but it's always interesting to think about it every once in a while.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I had been thinking about it as early as, like, when I first started, like, what does it look like? What do I have to do to get there? If I'm going to continue to spend this kind of time and energy on it, it'd be great to, like, be able to see a return on that and kind of have that, be more of the life that we live. So my wife and I had always kind of talked about this, like, partnership of, like, let's focus on doing things that, like, bring us life and things that we love, rather than, like, a certain kind of light lifestyle that has, dollar signs attached to it, kind of a thing. Like, let's live and then do things we love and care about. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big deal.
yeah, so that's been that. I mean, like, that her support has been huge in that way. So,
Well, so just to dig into the so indie publisher, you've done a number of games at this point. Have they all been kickstarted mostly? Have you stuck to the Kickstarter route?
they have, yep. So Best Treehouse Forest of Fun is my 10th, like,
10.
official release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you done 10 in the time I've done 7, or did you start before me? I mean, it was about the time Liftoff came, because
I
that's a pretty
think that
that's like 3 a year almost.
Yes, I think we were live at the same time for Liftoff and Fidelitas,
Oh, sure.
and so the first year I did 2, and then I did 4 the
Oh,
second
okay. So
year.
yeah. So you picked it
Yeah,
up. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I'm trying to do my goal would be quarterly, because the need to have a new product every 3 to 4 months is pretty essential for cash flow. As far as I've
Oh no! Oh
experienced.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm not disagreeing. I'm actually thinking. So, how willing are you now? I'm just asking questions I want to know the answer to. How willing
Yeah,
are you to go? Like, one of the things that I always am concerned about and thinking about, because actually I'm probably like you, really good at filling a pipe, right? Like, I know how to make games and get people together and do it. How concerned are you? How deep? How many campaigns will you go unfulfilled? Are you willing to go unfulfilled? Right? Like, so
yeah,
because unless you're not taking the campaign as part of how you're going to fund the game, you got to have at least a 6-month window from the campaign end, right? I mean, minimum, I would think. If you're not
right.
going to print prior, I mean, like, if files are ready, campaign closes, you probably can fulfill. You don't print in the States, do you? No.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, print China.
Yeah. So I would assume you probably need at least 4 or 5 months to deliver, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's about the spot that I'm in. So my rhythm that I've kind of settled into as I started to do more games is that I won't launch a new Kickstarter unless, like, so it's the downtime in between, right? Like, when I deliver files to the printer, there's nothing I can do but wait. So that was the time when I would maybe be getting the next game ready, and then I'm going to launch it just as I'm starting to fulfill it.
So you won't go
Fulfill the
more.
previous one.
So that is to say, actually, you wait even longer than I do. So you won't, until you're in fulfillment of your previous one. You don't do the next one.
Well, okay, so here, maybe I didn't explain that very well. um, I'll just tell you the current situation that I'm
Sure.
in to help you kind of understand. So I just finished, like, kind of wrapped up the files for Before the Earth Explodes and sent
Super
them
cool
to.
looking game, by the way. I haven't played it, but
Thank you.
very
Yeah,
cool looking
David
game.
Wagner-Rock, he was a fantastic illustrator, and the
And
designers
Daryl,
did a
yeah,
great
Daryl
job.
Andrews
Yeah,
is great.
Daryl, yeah. So I delivered that, but also my Kickstarter for Ladder 29 was, like, on the water when
Right.
Before the Earth Explodes was happening. So Before the Earth Explodes is at the printer. I just went down to the warehouse yesterday to pick up my copies of Ladder 29 to start shipping them out for next week. So those are going to get shipped next week while this one is running. So I typically would have maybe, like, shifted a couple weeks to launch Treehouse until I delivered Ladder 29. But because it's getting so close to the end of the year, like, when this campaign is over, I want to spend all that money and get the
Oh
files
no,
off to the
yeah, yeah. I
printer.
mean, I
Yeah,
understand the from a business perspective. I'm
for
I'm
sure.
mostly thinking about or considering what the backer perspective is. But
Yeah.
so you're slightly further along than me. So you basically have. to not yet entirely completely fulfilled Kickstarters, and you're running your third right now.
Yeah.
So far, I've done one unfulfilled. I've been too deep, one less deep. So, like, for example, I have legendary creatures in Sunset Over Water, and they're in the process, and they're at different stages.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably wouldn't launch a third campaign until those two have sort of hit through.
Right.
Though, it depends on how things are going and overall. But so I'm trying to figure out, the reason I was asking the question is I'm sort of trying to figure out, hey, I've been doing this for a long time. I have a good track record, as I know you do, in terms of delivery and all that stuff. How comfortable are people with the idea that we're staggering these things, and how much of it is? I have not gotten too much pushback, but also my campaigns aren't huge, and my audience isn't quite as I think when your audience is very, not savvy is not the right word, but core gamers, they have a lot more sensitivities. When in the audience in a filler space is actually a little bit more, I don't want to use a word that's pejorative, but like casual in play and casual in approach to like how things go and happen, right?
Sure, yeah, I would agree with that. And normally, I think I'm pretty similar to you. Like, really, the timing of this was like I would have hoped to have fulfilled Ladder 29 before launching this, but like I've really gotten no pushback. Anytime I've felt like maybe I was going to get pushback, like, or get nervous to send an update about like, here's the deal, like I'm going to do this thing, and it might not be the best thing, but it's the thing I have to do to make the company move forward. Like, I've gotten nothing but like positive stuff.
Yeah, that's been my I dealing with people and what inserts and sleeves is a hotter topic than this one is.
Seriously.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. One of the things that I've started to do, which I think has been helpful, is I used to like not really mention it, and then I'd launch the new campaign, and then I'd sort of go to the old backers. I'm like, hey, by the way, you tie it to an update. You're like, hey, manufacturing just got announced. By the way, there's this Kickstarter.
Yes.
As of Legendary Creatures, because I do a calendar, like here's your production schedule. I've now included in that production schedule what other events are happening. So when I gave that production schedules for Legendary Creatures, months before the Sunset Over Water campaign, it included a line that says, hey, there's going to be another campaign here for Sunset Over Water. And hey, I'm going to do this Edo Season 4 Gaming with Edo thing. It's going to be over here. So they know. So it's not even a surprise at that point. Or at least I could be like, it's been in 3 updates. Why didn't you mention it? But it's an interesting dynamic because clearly you haven't, and I don't think you should necessarily, making the leap to sort of say, hey, we're not going to go to Kickstarter anymore, and we're just going to self-publish and self-fund these things.
Right. Yeah, that is something that I would like to do, but at this point, like being the small guy, like that marketing power of like presenting an idea to an audience like that all at once has been really, really helpful. And the cash flow issue of like games like being so far apart and like, okay, all this money got spent for this, but now it doesn't come out, so I don't see a return for three to 4 months on it. Like Kickstarter makes it possible to do, more than one game a year. And I think as long as I keep delivering them on time and people like the games that they're getting, then we're in a good spot, because most people who support my projects know that I don't have like a warehouse of my own and a staff of a dozen people working with me. I'm just a dude who packs an envelope at home and sends you a game,
Well, yeah. And I think it's one of those interesting, because a lot of people get frustrated with Kickstarters and sort of them all becoming pre-orders and things like that. And I think there's this space where it's like, no, actually, it is super indie, and even if it's a company that's done a number of them, it's not really like practically that company can go off and do that. You have this sort of rolling, revenue, and really not a whole lot of, maybe you have a hit, maybe you don't, but there isn't a whole lot of money shooting out of it that you can just use to take on a new project. You basically, that investment of $2, $3, $4, $5, $10,000, depending on the game, to do the Kickstarter is really that sort of extra money you have.
Right.
And then you take the rest and you push it through. From a volume perspective, your campaigns, most of your campaigns have been in that 1 to 2,000 player count, right? Or maybe Ladders was less.
Yeah, I think that I've had a couple I've only had 3 that were 1,000 plus.
Oh, okay.
And most of them have kind of been in that, I think like 400 to 800 range. The other
Yeah,
like seven of them. So
so typically, so that would it would seem like are you normally doing? I mean, and if you don't want to answer any of these questions, don't have to. But are you doing runs that are like 2,000-3,000 unit run type of things, or more or less?
yeah, two is my standard, unless I'm doing a bunch more backers, and then the most I've ordered would be 4,000 of a game at this point. But Best Treehouse Ever is on its second printing now, which I did print without Kickstarter. I reprinted
Yeah,
that.
I did that
Um,
for Herbaceous. I took that
oh
with me.
yeah,
And,
so yeah, when that one gate, I had the sense that this game it was almost sold out like in the first month. So
yeah,
I knew that there was still demand for it, and yeah, it just made sense to kind of keep getting that one out there. So
right. And so yeah, that's basically pretty similar to me. I mean, most of my games have been those limited runs, 1,500, 2,000, whatever. It was really Herbaceous, which was the first one that was a big first run. I think the first one was about 4,000 or 4,500, and it
hmm
sold out that first week. And fortunately, it was a smaller game. Probably could fit in one of your size boxes, but I
yeah,
like it. It was a smaller game,
you
and
have your size boxes, so
yeah,
it makes
yeah. Well,
sense.
that's what it makes it easy. But um, so the idea of making that, hey, am I going to take a whatever $8,000 risk as a company? It wasn't the same as some giant risk, right? Like if trying to reprint, you know, Liftoff was like 20 grand, and I was like, I can't.
Right.
That's just too crazy. But and the herbaceous one has worked out. We just about sold out the second run, if not, maybe there's a few units left, and then we're gonna do a more modest third run, and I think that's gonna like be a print run that'll last for the next 3 years, type of thing. Like I don't,
Right.
but also, I sort of starting this line with Steve and Beth, and
hmm
that's sort of our lightweight. Not quite. I mean, they're all filler, but the
hmm
branding isn't quite as filler branding as your branding. It's more this really accessible, pretty, lightweight, accessible. Same sort of
Yeah.
thing, a little bit different message. But that's one where I'm like, well, if I know I'm going to do another herbaceous seedlings, or I'm going to do this other thing, like I know that I'll have some other copies of the game, and then they'll get restocked, and people will want to look back and see the whole thing. So
Right.
having that branded line lets you take a few more risks, I think, on product.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's a smart thing to do. I think like that's what Forest of Fun is about, that like re-engaging people who love my best-selling game in a way that is adding something valuable to their experience, and helps us continue to like let more people know about
And
that
so,
product. So
do you have a? You must have a pledge on that. That's both games, right?
yeah.
Does it come with the other game inside of it, or do you get send the ship and they gotta put
No,
it?
yeah, I'm gonna ship it separately. Yeah.
We one of the cool things that's hopefully happening next year. We're a little behind, but Thomas and I wanted to do. We did Murder of Crows together, and we were
Okay.
looking to do Unkindness of Ravens, which was a sequel. But we had to sort of have this negotiation with Atlas Games, who published the original game, because there's some similarities. But what we said was, hey, actually, what's going to end up happening if everything goes well is we're going to run it, but they're going to do a retail with it, so they're actually going to get it as we'll do
Oh,
the Kickstarter. They're going to do it, but what they're letting us do is do a sort of deluxe edition, which will be for the Kickstarter, and they're letting us print and basically put Murder of Crows inside of it.
oh, that's cool.
So it'll just be like you'll open it and both games will be there. It won't be like here's the so anyway. But we got to finish the game. If you don't finish the game, you can't have the Kickstarter. So you've
Well,
gone.
that's the smart way of doing it. You can't have a Kickstarter
You
with an
absolutely can,
unfinished game, but
and there's a lot of, and it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate that there was this big campaign that just is in the middle of it with the Richard Garfield Monsters Garden or whatever it's called,
okay.
and it basically the campaign is looking for $250,000, right? It's a huge ask, and partly it's because they want to take all the classic Magic artists and have them work on a game together. Um, but they only have like two pieces of art, right? They're like, hey, we want to fund this money to go pay 10,
Mm,
$500 a card artists to make this stuff, and that's and a lot of people are sort of making fun of it and giving it a hard time, but that's sort of a classic point of Kickstarter, right? Being able to do something that we couldn't possibly do this, but maybe we can go to Kickstarter and make it happen, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. Like, best treehouse ever's art. Well, I had 72 unique rooms. Like, and that was just, there was so much money for art where, like, if I was going to publish something direct with that, like, and that's more of the behind the scenes stuff that backers don't have to see and think about. But like the difference between spending $1,000 and what I spent on art, it was totally different. And there's like, if I was just releasing that to retail, like the returns on that would not have even paid for the art.
right.
So really, like, Kickstarter made that possible. So that's kind of cool. Like, in the spirit of Kickstarter, even though it's well-known people doing this big game, like, we're going to do something different that you don't get to see regularly. So that seems kind of a fair use of it.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's a big part of it, and just how it's allowing for so many creative and different projects, and it's not like you're not in distribution. You're doing all those things. Do you do any direct sales as well, or is it only through distribution?
I do direct sales. I do a few, like maybe 4 or 5 conventions a year, and then I do my own web store at greencouchgames.com. So
I haven't. I think if I make the leap into full time board game stuff, we'll see. But if I did that, I probably would go and say, okay, I'll set up a store and go that. I've sort of avoided that. Really, once it gets into retail, it's like Aldo's got the warehouse, he does it, and then I just I help him out and promote it. How have you been? And actually, we're sort of running out of time, but I do have a couple more questions. How have you been?
sure.
One of the areas that I've struggled with is that sort of publisher, not publisher development, but publisher marketing, and doing, like, when I look at a Renegade or a Passport Studios or these companies that are really like getting the marketing, just are so much more connected into that environment than I am. I still feel like I'm basically sort of, I go to cons and I show things, but I don't really have that sort of marketing sales wing. Have you built that at all, or do you sort of feel the way I do, or?
Yeah, I mean, my marketing has been kind of like based on like the tribes. Like Seth, have you read Tribes? Seth Godin's book.
No. I thought you were talking about go ahead.
Oh, and it's like a 100-page book by Seth Godin, who's a marketing guru, and like his idea is like all you need is 1,000 true fans to make a living doing what you love, and it's very much like the idea behind Kickstarter, behind social media marketing, and like this stuff that like the groups, the Facebook groups that are bringing people together, are like connecting a tribe of people and adding value to their lives, so they want to support the thing that you're making. So that's been my marketing, has been to like try to build a tribe of people who love filler games and kind of give them something they want, and then, using the tools that are available and cheap, if not free. Like I always feel lost when I'm trying to like do an ad on Board Game Geek or doing an ad on Facebook. It always feels like, figuring out analytics and like how to like figure out if that was worth my money or not. Like I'm just kind of like, hopefully somebody saw it, and maybe it didn't make me $1 today, but maybe in a month down the road, when they see my booth at Gen Con, they'll remember hearing of me and want to stop and like check out my game. So, so I don't do a whole lot. I don't know a whole lot about that, except for like I'm going to tell stories, like as clearly as I can about what we're doing and why we're doing it and who it's for and why you might like it. That and cash flow must be the difference between like people like those companies that you mentioned and people like us.
Yeah.
Like to be able to spend as professionals to like make me a plan on how to spread the word and fund it, like that I think that would be a huge asset. But like,
I really think there's an opportunity for somebody to figure out how to provide that service in a meaningful way. Like, in some ways publishers do that, but they're like, yeah, we'll take your games and we'll do it. And that's like not as meaningful. Like localization is another one that sort of fits in that category. And it was like, boy, there seems like an opportunity for somebody to be like, hey, I'll take a cut of a percentage of your localization revenue, and I'll go set the deal up, and I'll work it through. And because it's just it's just in a bigger company, you have people who have different skill sets responsible for different things. When it's just you're only as good as you are and who you know, right?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I've had some of that experience with localization too. Best Treehouse Ever has been in 7 different languages, and like I'm like had to ask a lot of friends, like, am I gonna screw this up? Am I doing this right? And like learning as I go.
How many companies for the 7 languages?
5.
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly, right? Like,
Yeah.
and they're all different contexts, they're all different contracts. Like,
Yes.
like it's you know, and
Like
then
different anxieties about like cultural appropriate communication. Like am I going to offend you by just being myself? Like, um,
oh man,
yeah. I mean, it's a chore, and that's one of the things. Like shipping and international shipping is not my strong suit, and that's my honestly my biggest challenge on Kickstarter is that like because I fulfill them myself, I charge people what it costs, and it's not pretty. Um, and I haven't really dealt a lot with fulfillment companies. My first two campaigns did, but like I felt like 80% of my customers were from the US, and I could cut their prices in half if I did it myself. And that smaller percentage, like if they really want it, they'll go for it. And I was trying to find solutions, but nothing really settled with me. So like then my model became like, okay, I'm gonna do my best to play to my strengths, and then I'm gonna try to work this localization with partners
sure.
idea, and like, and that's kind of been my solution and where I put a lot of my energy, because I'm like, as one guy, like I can put my energy into like figuring out this shipping thing that feels really overwhelming to me, or working with these human beings that want to make our game in their own language and are doing a good job with games in their own markets, and learn something along the way. So I've kind of pushed more of my energy into that localization market than the shipping and kind of fulfillment area. But I mean, there's certainly trade-offs, like every single day, of like how I'm going to spend my time, where I'm going to focus my energy.
Oh
But
yeah, no, I know,
yeah,
I know all about that. I mean, even just little things like, again, in that Kickstarter for Gaming with Edo that I'm doing on November 1st, like, the thing to do is add a bunch of promos, right, for like different things, for games, and publishers even like where you want some promos, Ed, and it was like, I don't want. That's not what it's about. The idea is I'm just looking for people who like the channel to support it, and I can get some better equipment and do some better stuff. But if I make it this promo thing, one, people are coming for the promos and not the channel. But then also, like, I know what it takes to ship around the world, and like, I don't want to spend 100 hours doing that fulfillment when I can make 100 hours of video content, right? Like,
right.
that's the point. It's not about me stuffing envelopes, right, and finding cards and chasing down publishers. I'd rather make videos, right?
And that's what they're supporting, right? That's smart, because like they're supporting because they like what you do already. Like they could probably get those promos from other
Yeah,
routes. So
yeah.
like
Well,
if they
and
just want to help you do what you do best, then they can support that.
yeah, and there will be people who are like, well, I'm not getting anything. I'm not going to do it. And it's like, that's cool, man. I'm still not going to go sign myself up for 100 hours of fulfillment. um, anyway, so listen, we've come to the time on this hardware where it all starts falling apart. So I got to end. But thanks for being on. Certainly, if you're watching, Best Treehouse Ever is a fabulous game. I haven't played the expansion, but I'm sure it's great because everything Green Couch does is great.
Thank you.
That I've played. You can send me
Sure.
more if you like. But so thank you for being on, Jason, and thank you everyone for watching.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. See you guys.
Awesome. Bye.